Hello everyone and welcome to the stream. Hello, welcome everyone. Good morning, good night. It depends on where you are. But this is going to be most likely the only Next.js tutorial or Next 13 tutorial that you need. I've seen a lot of people requesting that, hey, the Next.js 13 documentation is not up to date. We're having trouble just understanding how the things work. Should we use the app router or the pages router? How do we create our APIs? What do we use for sending back the data and whatnot? So I know this can be really difficult, and that is because there's so many documentations and so many tutorials out there which are also not really up to date. So I'm going to show you something that I've already built, but I've built with Angular, but we're going to do the same thing with Next and we'll see how that goes essentially. So let's quickly go through an app that I'm going to show you right now. Give me one quick second. So this is the application that I built with Angular. There's a tutorial coming in really soon. So those of you who are really interested in Angular, let me know in the chat. If you love Angular, just type I love Angular in the chat. Or if you love React, go with that as well. Type I love React in the chat. And if you're super interested in Next.js, let me know that I want to learn Next.js in the chat as well. So this is something that I built. Essentially what this looks like is if I have some comments, I could actually have, for example, I could go here and see replies. Here, I could also try to see if there are any nested comments. For example, this one, I remember had nested comments, as you can see here. And then this probably also had comments, and then I could go on and on and on. So this, excuse me. So this is something that we are going to build. I'm going to copy paste some of the things from this application, but I'm going to show you also how you can do it in React as well. So this is going to be what we are going to build with Next.js. So we're going to start with going to the documentation. We're going to create a new project. We're going to use Mongoose as the database for this one. For example, if I show you the existing database that we have right now, this is how it looks. If I go to the collections, I should be able to see the threads app right here. And inside there, we have comments. And then we have a bunch of users as well. So we're going to do more or less the same thing. And then we'll take it from there. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe if you have not already, and let me know in the comments which is your favorite framework. So what is your favorite framework of choice? Let's go. All right. So let's actually get started. Excuse me. So we're going to start with going to Next.js 13 or Next.js documentation. Let's go to the documentation, get started. We're going to use the app router. So this is what you want. The pages router is something that used to be there in Next 12, but you can also still use the pages router. But I would recommend using the Next router or the app router instead. Adil, hey, how's it going, Adil? All right, so how do we get started? You go to installation or you go to get started. There should be a command that says create next app, which should be right here. Installation, this one. So this is how you create a Next.js application. We are going to work with TypeScript, and we also are going to sort of implement both React, obviously, and Node.js side as well. So I'm going to open my terminal. Let's go and open terminal. I'm gonna go to cd desktop, or let's actually go to let's do an ls. What do we have right here? Cd work. We do only have salt personal, or do we have a YouTube? We have a personal one here. We can start. So this one has YouTube, and in here we are going to create npx create next app latest. So make sure that you're running npx create next app with latest, and here we can then choose, of course, if you want to use TypeScript, Tailwind, blah blah blah. We're going to set this up in just a bit. Taking a question from Adil. Adil says, can you suggest any good course to learn Node.js? Adil, there should be a video on YouTube that is called, or on my channel, if you look at in Code with Ahsan, you look for MERN stack crash course. That is really good when you want to learn Node.js. So I think it gives you a good idea of practical knowledge. But I think there's more channels like Academind, Web Dev Simplified, and much more. So you can use those as well. So in here, I'm gonna name this thread next app or threads next app. I'm going to use TypeScript, so say yes to this. ESLint, of course, yes. Tailwind CSS, absolutely. Do we want the source directory? No, we are going to skip the source directory because that's not really recommended. And I'm going to use that the app router. Do we want to customize the default import alias? No, we don't want to do that. Now that we have this, we're quickly going to start with, and let me also open mouse highlight so you can also see what I'm doing. Alrighty. We're going to wait for this to finish. There we go. Now we can open this into VS Code. So we can say code and then threads next app. So you can obviously choose your editor of choice, whatever. So you can start with this one. Okay. I'm going to answer Adil. So Adil, if you go to youtube.com/CodewithAhsan, you should be able to find Node.js authentication with cookie sessions. This is a really good tutorial. I would absolutely recommend this one. If you want to look into authentication and how to manage session cookies, blah, blah, blah. So you can look at this one, but also look into this one now. Let me try to find it for you. That's not the one. There should be one that is called MERN stack crash course. Let's see if I can find it. So if you want to build something complex, it doesn't matter. Once you have your basics clear, then you can obviously jump to the complex stuff, but you have to start with the basics. So this is a really good course. When you do this, you go through the front end and the back end and everything. And this video itself, the one that we are working on right now, the Next.js 13, it's also something that you can also use to build enterprise applications as well. Okay. So now that we have the Next.js application up and running, let's actually start this. So you can see that the node modules are already installed once we create with the create next app. If we have a look at the folder directory, you could see that here we have the app folder, and inside we have a bunch of things, layout, page, and a couple of things as well. Excuse me. So in here, what I can do now is I can run npm run dev, and this should run the Next.js application on localhost 3000, and we are going to take it from there. We're going to discuss a couple of things. Oops, looks like 3000 is busy. Maybe we have, let's have a look. Oh, that's because my threads app is running. So let's actually turn that off. So we're going to quickly go to the threads BE, turn this Nest.js app off, and now we should be able to run npm run dev, and this should run on localhost 3000. Cool. Let's quickly open this. Okay. So now we have the Next.js application. So I want to show you a couple of things, and we are going to take it from there. I want to actually talk about what is Next.js in itself and how does it differ from React in general. So I'm going to go through the application itself, what we are going to build. But before that, let's talk about Next.js itself. So what happens is if you have a particular app or a user who's trying to access your application. So let's say this is the user trying to request your application, and this guy right here is your server, right? This server, how things work is if I try to go to CodewithAhsan.dev, my browser is the user, or you can also say client. And where I got this whole page from is the server. So what happens is that if I show you right click and view page source, this is the HTML that I get back when I go to this particular page. And if I try to search a couple of things, you will see that I will find them. For example, this thing, software architect. So if I try to search this in the page source, you can see that here it is. Let me try to find it again. So here you can see that it's here. So an HTML comes back when you request it from a server. Whenever you go to a particular page, this page basically has an IP or has a DNS. This basically points to some computer on the internet, which then returns an HTML file for you. So this is how web applications work. I go to a particular page or I go to a particular URL, and then some HTML comes back, and then that HTML gets rendered. So if we sort of talk about what really happens is that the user client essentially tries to request the information from server. So this, you can say that client requests HTML. Then what happens afterwards, and we can say, okay, this is maybe step one. Oops, what did I do? Should be step one. Oops, what did I do again? I'm pressing F1 instead of 1. So this is the first step. The client requests the HTML. Then what happens is, can I shorten it down? No, I can't. Then what happens is the server then responds back. So in here, then you can say that the server responds with the HTML. So that's step 2. Then the client itself, it starts sort of rendering the UI. So your browser in general, that is what it tries to. For example, I would just put it here. So what happens here is browser starts rendering HTML. So that is sort of the third step. Then parses JavaScript. Then you can say executes JavaScript, or you can also say loads JavaScript, or loads JavaScript, executes JavaScript, and then it loads the CSS as well. Executes CSS. So those are sort of the steps that you basically see when you're running an application. So third, fourth, this guy is going to be fifth, and sixth. Now there are different variations of this when you see on the internet. So you'll find multiple sort of explanations on how this works, but this is the most basic version. Your browser or your client requests an HTML from the server responds back with the HTML, the browser starts rendering that, loads JavaScript, executes JavaScript, and then loads and executes CSS, and that's pretty much it. Now, how does this differ when it comes to React versus Next.js? So when you talk about React, what really happens in this case is it's exactly the same thing. If I wanted to copy this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. So when we talk about just React, then what happens is the browser starts rendering the HTML, then loads JavaScript, and then it runs React, and then it renders React components. So this is essentially the flow that it looks at when you're talking about React. So when you try to sort of get a React application, what would happen is that you will not get the entire HTML. For example, here you can see that I have this text Mohammad Ahsan Ayaz, blah, blah, blah. This is inside the whole HTML. If you look at the HTML tag, you're going to find here that this is a div. Outside that, you can see right here, you can see this is the body tag, right? So if I zoom in, I can see that the body tag inside has a class, has a div. So all the things that you see in my application, it's rendered, it comes from the backend. But when you look at a regular React application, that's usually not the case. So for example, if I try to go to any of my repositories, let's hope I find something. Maybe something could be found at CodewithAhsan. By the way, you see that URL, github.com/asanias? Go and follow me. You can see 814 people follow. Those people are really cool. So if I try to go here and try to see, all right, can I please get a React app? So if I go to repositories, see React, maybe this one, I think I deployed it. So I hope I deployed it. No, I did not. No. But can I? No. Public? No. All right, let's see something else that I might have deployed. GH pages? Nope, not this one as well. Cypress Cucumber? Maybe. Yeah, there we go. So this is a React application that I've already deployed. And if I inspect this, OctoKit REST, What? Okay, anyways, if I go to elements, you will see that when I try to request this application, what comes out from the server or wherever this HTML file is this div ID root. So what usually people see when they look at the React application, or when we are working with the React application, this is what the browser gets. So in this particular case here, the browser starts rendering HTML. We only have this div ID root. After that, starts loading JavaScript, runs React, and then it populates the rest of the data. So if I had a look at, for example, let's see, nodes front end. I don't know if this one works. Maybe this works. Or this doesn't. Nope. So many of my applications have either their server dead or they don't work. We'll see. Let's try to find one last thing. So Ahsan Ayaz, let's go there. Let's have a look at React. Versioning app. Have I deployed this one? Nope. Budgeting app. I'm pretty sure this is going to be deployed somewhere. Yes. Is this server-side rendered? I'm not really sure. Let's see. So if I go to the view source wrap. So here, this application, you can see that when I look at this application, there's a lot going on here. It's a budget, eBay sale guitar, blah, blah, blah. But if I look at the source, what comes from the server, you're going to see that the body right here, if I try to search the body has nothing inside. It has just this div ID root. That's pretty much it. So when the client or the browser requests this HTML that, hey, give me my application, give me my web application, this is what the server returns, div ID root. After that, it starts rendering the application. So if I go and inspect this, and if I go to network, and let's say I go ahead and say Control-Shift-P, disable JavaScript. And if I do this and refresh this, you can see that it says you need to enable JavaScript to run this application. But what's more important is in the elements, you will only see div ID root. So I've disabled JavaScript. So there's no JavaScript running. That means there's no React as well. So if there's no React, what I get from the backend is just this HTML with ID root and nothing else. And then React starts kicking in, and then it reads the components, and then it renders those components. So everything happens after you have your browser. And I'm talking all about this because there's a difference between how Next.js works versus how React works. What is the difference between Next.js versus what we have in React? Let's talk about it. But before, hey Bush, how's it going? Hey, how's it going? So the difference between React and Next.js is, and this is all client-side rendering. So this is client-side rendering, which means that everything basically happens when or after the browser had started rendering, but also after the React is run. Okay. And this also means that if I wanted to make it much clearer, we get back something like this. We get div ID root. That's what we get from the server. And let's also put body here. So this is essentially what we get from the server, and then everything kicks in, React starts rendering, and then everything works. So this is essentially what happens with React client-side rendering. Then we also have something called server-side rendering. What happens at server-side rendering? When the browser requests for the server, in this particular case, then the client requests the server in this case. So if I go here, the steps change a bit, and I'm going to talk about what those steps are. So let's go with this guy, and this guy. What? Whenever I do Control C, it removes it. Control C? No, I was doing Control X. All right, so let's move it here. So what usually happens in Next.js, let's talk about this, and let me fix this guy. Wait, come back. So in Next.js, what really happens is the client requests the HTML. The server tries to see if I need to render anything. So before the server can send back some HTML, there is one more step. The one more step right here is that the server basically renders the HTML. Server renders the HTML, and then the server sends back the response. So this is step 3. When you're rendering everything on server side, the server creates the HTML and sends it back. That is the difference between this application that we just saw that just sends back a body with div versus if I go here and if I disable the JavaScript here as well, let's see what happens. So if I go here, Control Shift P, disable JavaScript, and now if I go here and still refresh the page, you still see a lot of things being rendered. And that is because it comes all from the backend. It comes rendered from the server. So all of this HTML that you see, there's no React on the front end. Nothing is working because I've disabled JavaScript, which means that if I try to do something that included JavaScript, that will not work right now. So in here, all of this HTML that you can see here comes from the server. So if I go to here, you can see that my browser requests the HTML from the server. The server renders the entire HTML that you see here. It renders it on the server, and then it sends it back to the front end, which is already rendered. So the difference between those two things is that when the user gets the server, it is already rendered. So the user actually sees some content by default and it's not empty or there's no loader being shown. Something is rendered already. And then the browser essentially kicks in, or then it loads JavaScript and then it does the rest of the stuff. So this is the stuff afterwards. So this is going to be step 4. This is going to be step 5. And this is going to be step 6. In this particular case, we don't say it renders React component. We say something like hydrates React component. And there's a difference between those two. I would encourage you to look it up, what hydration means. But in short, when the server has rendered the views, imagine that we have 10 users that you needed to show, a list of 10 users. The backend renders those 10 users, sends it on the front end. It comes to the browser starts React, and React continues from there. The React on the client side or on the browser does not re-render them completely, does not do the same thing again. So they sort of continue from there. So I hope that makes sense. So this is sort of the gist of how React works, or how Next.js works, or what is the benefit of Next.js versus React. Next.js also does something else that's called static site generation. We're probably not gonna go there, but one of the things that you should understand when we are working with Next.js is that by default, the components that we have on Next.js, they're rendered on the server side. If we have something that we want to fetch right there. So if we have a server-side component, or what we call them is React Server Component, RSC, is when we want to do server-side rendering. And if we want to use a client-side component, then we have to tell it. So we are going to get into that. Don't worry about that at the moment. Now that we have the React or the some idea of how Next.js works, I'm going to actually close the rest of them. Or actually, let's keep them open. We're going to go farther from there. So now let's have a look at how does this work. So if I go to my pages, this is how a Next.js application look like. Every page has to have this name, page.tsx, and this is because we are using the app router. So for example, right now you see this is the default page. I have a bunch of things that are being shown here. For example, this header by Vercel, Next.js, docs, learn, blah, blah, blah. All of this is coming from this page tsx. Because if I go here and if I remove everything, then nothing would show. So let's say if I remove this div, and if I just say, for example, there's going to be a main inside. Oops. Let's go till the div. Ooh, here. And let's remove the div. And then here I can say something like I have a heading. So h1, and here class name, text5xl. Let's say this is gonna say welcome to Threads app. So in here, now you can see this text. So this is the entire page that we have right now. Now, if I have to create another page, how Next.js works is that we have a folder structure that if we follow that, Next.js automatically creates those pages. And that is why the React team also recommends just to use Next.js when it comes to going to production. So if you go to, for example, let's go to reactjs.org. I think that's the one, or they have now react.dev. And if you try to look for something like, production, uh, production grade React frameworks, the first one that you see is Next.js. So they recommend using Next.js. That's why we are having this conversation and this tutorial as well. So now that we have sort of established that, let's fix some of the things. So first of all, let's understand that if I want a new page, I can create a folder, and inside I can create a page.tsx file, and Next.js magically just creates that route. For example, if I had a threads route, then I would have to create a page.tsx inside. Okay. And then I can do the same thing as this one. So I can copy paste this, rename this function to threads page. And in here, I can say welcome to, or I could say this is the threads page, right? And if I do this, then I can go to localhost 3000/threads. And you should be able to see that magically now this says this is the threads page. If I go back, that's the home page. If I go forward, that's the threads page. So this is how easy it is to just make routing work within Next.js. So I hope you got the idea. Now we're going to do some examples to understand how Next routing works, but then also we are going to go to the actual thing, that is we need to implement the comments or the threads application. So in this case, you can see that we have a threads application. Now let's have a look at how routing works further. So what happens if I wanted to go to a particular thread by ID? So let's say we're just going to hard code a bunch of stuff. So let's say we had, I'm going to create a file. Let's say we have some comments. So we could do things like, let's say dummy data.ts. So in this case, let's say we have const threads list, and here we have a threads list. Every thread has an ID, has a text. Let's say this is the first comment, and then you could also say by, and here for the sake of simplicity, let's say Ahsan Ayas in this case, and also let's say Muhammad Ahsan Ayas. Now I have this list, so I'm gonna also create a bunch of lists, and this is so I can have a page with a list of threads that I could show. So in here, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, hey, this is gonna be like this. So ID 1, this is the second comment, and then I can also go ahead and say, hey, and this is ID 2, this is the third and last comment, and let's say this is from my brother Mohsen. So now that I have this dummy data, I'm gonna quickly go here, and then here in the threads page. Now this gets a bit confusing because you have a page TSX here, which is the top level page. Then you have a threads page, blah, blah, blah. So everything is page.tsx, but that's how Next.js works in Next 13. So now in the threads page, I can actually loop over the threads and I can show that data. So here we can say something like threads list, and in here we can have a UL. So let's quickly implement a UL. And inside here, we're going to have a map of li. So we can say threads list. And is that exported? No, it's not. Export cons threads list. And here now I can say threads list dot map. And here I could say something like thread. And in here I can now return an li. So return an li. And since we are mapping over it, we need a key that is going to be thread.id. And then in here, I'm going to render the thread text. So here we could say something like, I don't know, maybe let's actually implement two things. So here we're going to say a h2, and in here we are going to say thread.text, and here we can say something like h4 or h3 rather to be compliant, and here we can say thread.by. So now that I have this, you can see right here it says this is the first comment, this is the second comment, blah blah blah, right? So you can see the list items right here. Now if I wanted to have a page where I could show individual thread, That's going to be interesting. Blooper. But now, if I wanted to show a particular thread item, if I click that and then I go on that page and I can see that, that's going to be interesting. So what I'll do here is, in order to get up to a particular thread item, I want to make this list clickable. Let's also sort of style this a bit so this looks a bit nicer. So this is going to be class name. Let's say bg wide. We have rounded md p4. So this looks something like this. And then we also have mb4. So we have some sort of space there as well. And then the text gonna be slate 900. And there you go. So here you can see that I have a bunch of list items. So this is the first comment. This is the second comment. This is the third and last comment. So having these right here, let's also do mb4. And now you can see that if I click this particular item, I should be able to go to the detail page of this one. So just showing that particular list. So what I want to do is to do something like threads/1, and then I should be able to go to this page. Thread/0, and I should be able to go to this page. So I should be able to go to a particular page by ID. And if I want to do that, I would have to make my route such that my route can take an ID parameter and I can get that item. So what I can do now is I can go and create a folder here. And in here, I can say something like ID. And this tells Next.js that this ID is going to be a parameter in the route. So when I do something like thread0, so when you do something like this, thread0, then this 0 becomes the ID. This 0 itself becomes the ID. This 1 becomes the ID. So in here, I can actually take that ID and then I can work with it. So now I can create a page.tsx inside TWSX, no, TSX. And in here, I'm going to copy paste this code, but I'm going to name this thread detail page. So now in this page, I can say single thread page. Okay, so bear with me so far. Now we have three different routes. One is the global page, which is page.tsx. So since this is inside the app folder, this is the global one, page.tsx, that says welcome to threads. If I go to my home page right here, you can see that welcome to threads is the default route. Then the second route that we have is this one, which is threads. So if I go to localhost 3000/threads, I see the threads list. The third route that we have, and this threads worked because we have a page TSX inside threads. So this is linked. This threads has this page TSX, and this shows the list. The third route that we have is this ID, which triggers whenever we go to threads/1. And if I go there, then I should be able to see a single thread page. Now we have three different routes as we discussed. So this is one. This is the home page. And then this one is the threads list /threads. So these are sort of the three routes. You could say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. This is going to be the ID of the thread. So these are the three routes that we have created so far. This one is this page TSX, the global one. This one is threads/page TSX, and you can see it right here. So this one is app threads page TSX. And the third one is app threads ID page TSX. Everybody with me so far? So I hope you understand that we have got three pages that we can work with. Now, if I want to get this particular item, so if let's say I'm on the threads page, and if I click this third one, then on this page, I should be able to see the third comment only. So how do I get that? The only way to get that third comment is to get this ID from the browser and then loading that comment. So when I click this particular page, I should be able to go to threads 1, thread 2, thread 3. So let's do it in two steps. First, this link, clicking these should take us to this with the particular ID. How do we do that? We're going to go to the list page, and inside here, we're going to wrap this inside the link element from next link. Again, I'm repeating. So we are going to import the link from next link, and inside that we are going to put these two things. And in here I can put the href. So href is going to be backslash threads slash, and here you can give the particular ID. What is the ID of a thread? Thread.id. So now if you do this, and if I go back to my threads link, you can see that these ones, if I click this right now, it takes me to thread 0. The second one takes me to thread 1. The third one takes me to thread 2. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. Another good way would probably be to wrap everything inside the link, or to just give this class name to this link. And the reason for that is, if I go back, you're going to see that if I mouse over here, click here, nothing happens. I have to click right inside because the link is inside the li. So I'm gonna give this class name, and let's see how this works. No, it doesn't work. Nice. Let's give it to this, but then can we take out the link and move the li inside? I think we should be able to. It would still hurt the semantics of it, which I don't really want. I mean, I could use, let me think. I think the padding itself could be inside. So let's remove the padding from this, and let's do a class name p4. But the problem is the link tag would probably not get it, because yes. Oh, you have the class. But why is it not taking those though? Class name p4. And if I give this also block. Yes. So the anchor tag has to be block and p4, and this works. Cool. Now if I click here as well, you can see that this takes us to the page. Cool. Little UI or UX things that I really want to put there, because yeah, otherwise I won't feel good. So if I click this, I see the ID. Now, how do we get this ID on the page? Because I want to get the particular comment when I click this one, for example. So first we'll show the ID here, then we are going to get the particular comment. So in this case, I'm going to go to the ID here, and then inside here, what you usually have is Next.js automatically provides you something called params, and that should contain the ID. So in this, ID is going to be a string, and then this is what you basically get. So in this case, I have to type this as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this or cut this and say const type, and here, or not const type, should be type props equals, and in here we should have params with ID string. And in here I can say I'm going to get props of type props. And now I can actually render the props right here. So Next.js automatically provides us these params just like this. So I can go here and say now props.params.id. And if I save this, you can see that ID2 here. If I go back, click here, now it doesn't show because the ID is 0. This one has the ID 1. Oh, what happened? Did I mess up? This works. If I go here and if I save this, this works. Why does it not work out of the box? Why do I have to save this? Is this because we are not providing the link tag with params? Is that so? Let's have a look at the Next.js documentation for link. Maybe I missed something. Duplicate. Let's go to link. So if I go to link, I say dashboard, href replace, blah, blah, blah. Path name, query. Not really. How about params? Yeah, I think this should work. But it does not. Why it doesn't work? Let's have a look. So props is there. We have params that we also can get. Threads detail page. It goes to the page. It tries to get the ID. And then it renders that. But when this sends it back on the front end, All right, let's have a look at the documentation further. So in here we have the app router. We should also have params. So when we have the slug page, shop one, slug one. Yeah, this should actually be fine. So you get the params, param slug, blah, 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 params.slug. But that's what we are doing, right? Params.id. And then if I go here, click this guy. Now it works for some reason. I have no clue, but that is most of my days. I have no clue what I'm doing. So this is the first comment, goes to 0. This is the second comment, and this is the third comment. The only thing that I did was I changed this to params. So if I do this again, would this not work again? Oh, it works. I have no clue. Okay. Anyways, let's move forward. So now that we see the ID on the page, once we have the ID right here from the params.id, we can actually get the particular element. So in here, we could do something like const thread equals, and we can say threads list dot find, and then we find the thread. So here we can say thread or thr, and in here we can say, hey, return the thread thr.id, which matches with params.id. So the only problem here is that the params ID is a string, the thread ID is a number. So we need to convert either of those. So here we can say something like number and this, and then we have the thread, and then we should be able to show the thread itself. So here, then I can go and say something like, hey, we have json.stringify thread, and we should be able to then see the thread. So here you see, if I'm on the 0, this is the first comment. Here it says this is the first comment. If I go back, click the other one, this is the second comment. This should have shown the second comment, but it did not before. Why? Now it does. Then this is the third comment. This is the third and the last comment, as you can see. So now it works flawlessly. Now that we have this, I'm going to just copy and just do this, or sort of copy the li from here, just to not repeat myself. So here we have the thread.id, and the thread is here, and the thread would be here. So I can actually say something like thread this, and then I can import, and I can actually ignore the link. I can put the p4 right here, remove the link, because we are already inside the detail page, and this should be good. I'm gonna format this a bit. And when you want to format the entire file, you can do Control K and then Control F. So Control K, Control A, and then Control F, or Control A, Control K, and then Control F, and then it does it. Cool. So now that we have this, let's have a look. There, you can see this is the first comment. We don't want this li to have a list style, so we can say list style or list none. No. But that actually goes on the UL. So let's change this to a div rather. And there we go. Now if I go here, something is cached. That's why. This is the second comment. This is the first comment. This is the second comment. This is the third and last comment. So everything looks fine when we implement this. So now you know two things. One, how to create different routes, how to get a particular ID and then sort of get it within the function or within your server-side component. And then you can see that you get the information and then you return this. So as I said in the beginning, the Next.js actually returns everything from the backend rendered. So if I go here and if I try to do page source, you will see that everything is rendered. So if I try to search, this is the first comment. This is, you can see the HTML is right here. So unlike the front end of a React app, which is client-side rendered, which only has this div ID root, the Next.js application that we have right now sends everything back from the backend. So everything is rendered. The whole HTML is rendered. Okay. If I wanted to not do this, then I would choose client-side rendering, but we are not going to go there today. Or maybe we will. We'll see. So now that you see, all right, I've got a thread list, as you can see. This is the second comment. This is the third and last comment. Now let's also talk about how do we get query parameters. So for example, if I needed to do something like threads slash maybe search something. So let's say I wanted to search by some text. So I could say text equals, let's say, comment or last. If I wanted to search last, then this should only show me this one. If this was the case, then I can actually get this query parameter as the search parameter in my Next.js application. So this is the list page. So if I go to my threads page, which is this one, threads list page, page.tsx, and here I can actually get search parameters. So how do we do that? Let's first type them. So type props equals search params. This is what Next.js provides out of the box. And here we have a text that is going to be of type string. And in here I can actually do something like this, search params of type props. Now I can get the search params and show you the information of search params. So let's do it right here. So I can say thread list, and here let's show a p tag if there's a search param. So we can say search params and or search params dot text. If that's the case, then I should show a p tag that says search term equals, and here we can say search params dot text. Okay. So if I do this, you can see here it says search term is last. How did I get this last? Because of here. So if I do something like this, you can see right there as well. So anything that we have here as a query parameter or search parameter can be retrieved using this search params. This is Next.js providing us this out of the box. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to search by this within my threads list. So just before this map, I'm just doing this on random. This is not a production app. So I'm gonna quickly hack around this. So we can say filter. So filter by the term. So in this case, we can say, hey, every thread, we are going to actually filter it. So we can say if there is no search term, so we can say search params dot text. If there's no search param, then we return true, which means that if there's no search param, then we return true. Otherwise, what we do is we say return thread dot text dot to lowercase in this case, so to lowercase, and then we can say dot, and then we are going to say contains or includes the search params dot text. So here we are doing two things. We are saying, hey, if there's no search params or if there's no search text, then just return true, which means that we'll get all the results. But if there's a search term, then we are going to make sure that each thread which we get back has that search term in its text. And then we should also do the to lowercase here as well. So this is what we have done so far. Includes to lowercase, easy peasy. And now you can see that I see nothing because this does not exist in any of the comments. If I don't have any search string, I see all of them. If I say text equals and then I say first, I get the first one because the only first comment has the word first. If I search for something like second, I only get the second one. If I search Ahsan, I get nothing because the text doesn't have Ahsan in there. But if I try to search last, then I only get the last comment. So yes, this is what you can get. And if I say comment, then you can also see that I have the last comment as well, or every comment in this particular case, because we are searching for comment. Is everyone with me so far? Can you write a comment that says, hey, I understand everything, or if I don't understand anything, that would be super helpful. So now we talked about a couple of things. We talked about how to route, how to get an ID param, how to get a search param, and how to create those pages. So now we have sort of an interesting application right now. But now what I want to do is to be able to actually create an app that I can work with to create different threads and whatnot. So I want to create essentially a MongoDB schema. and then I want to be able to work with that to create different threads. So again, if I want to show you how the app should look, this is how the app should look in general. So we discussed some of the core concepts of Next.js like routing, search parameters, and trust me, those are the major things that you really want to learn. But then also there are some things like layouts. So I'm not really sure if I should put that all of that in here. So I might create a whole course on Next 13, but we are going to focus now on the main things that we want to talk about in this threads application. So first of all, you also have to understand that apart from the page TSX, we also have some special pages. So if you go to app router in the documentation, you will try to find something called special pages. So pages and layouts. And in here, you will see pages. In here, we have layouts. We also should have more files if I can find it. Not here. Nope. Let's see. I'm gonna have to see defining routes, shared layouts, templates, define a route. Nope. Let's see. Using the app router, routing, build your application. If I go here to API reference, nope. Let's try to search this again. Special pages, source directory, layout, pages and layout. That's the interesting part, because when you try to search something in the Next documentation, super hard. React server components, defining routes, special files. Not so this is the one that I wanted to show you. So we have a bunch of things. First of this is page. Every page.tsx is essentially a page. That's what we have understood so far. Every layout file applies to all the pages within the app. So if I go to layout, you see right now we have just HTML and body, and inside that we have children. But what I could do is I could actually go ahead inside here and implement a head, not head, but rather a header. And inside that, I could then have a main, and then I can have children. So that means that every page will have this header, and then the page will be rendered inside a main. And that is essentially it. So now if I try to go to a particular page, let's go here. So if I go to this header, I can actually implement a nav here. So let's say nav. Inside here, I'm going to have a logo. So we are going to call this a span. Inside here, we are going to say threads next app. And now you can see this next app right here on the threads page. But if I go to a particular page, I also see it here. That is the power of layout. The layout means that every page will have this thing right here, but then inside we can render the specific pages. So now if I go to even the home page, you should be able to see the header is still there. That is sort of the beauty right here. So let's quickly sort of lay this out. So I'm going to say class name. Let's go with BG Indigo. And let's go with 600 maybe. Let's do H. Maybe let's go with 14. PX is going to be 3. PY is going to be 1.5. So this looks something like this. And then we have flex item center. So it looks something like this. And now I can have links right here as well. Okay. So now that we have this right here, we can also have some lists or some links. So UL. And if I look at my application, we just had home and about. So we could have the same things right here as well. We could create an about page or a threads link. But let's go with home and about. So here we would have an li that says home. And then here an li that says about. Okay. These things should be inside a link. So I can have the links working. So this would be a link from next link. And this should say home. It's going to be the same thing right here, but this would say about. About. And in here we have href that says slash. And then this guy should have href about. Okay, let's quickly format this. So now that I have this, you can see not this one, but in here, we should have the home and about as well. Doesn't look really good. So what we are going to do is this UL is going to have a class name of flex gap 4. So we can see it like this. Then we are also going to have a gap 4 items center. So they're centered. And then I want this nav to be flex. So class name flex items center space between. No, it was justify between. And there you go. So in this particular case, we have the nav, we have this span, and then we have this flex right here. Justify between. And if I refresh this, the justify between didn't work. Let's see why. So this is the nav. We had the flex. We had justify content space between. This is the span. And this is the UL. Interesting. All right. So now what we can also do is do class name flex1. So this should oh, is this okay, because this doesn't take now I understand. So I don't need flex1. What I need here is I want, because we have the header taking the full width, but we don't have the nav taking the full width. So we need the nav to say, hey, I'm going to take full width. So this should be width full. And there we go. So now we have a space in there, right? And then you can have things like this one, mouse over, do this and that. It's perfectly fine. But now I also want to tell you one more thing. You see the title here, it says create next app. I don't want that. I want this to say threads next app. And secondly, I want to maybe change when I go to, let's say, the about page to something else. Now the about page doesn't exist. So you can see it says 404, but that's fine. But what I want to do is if I go to a particular threads page, I should be able to see threads, and the title should change as well. So next has something called metadata. Let's see. So generate metadata right here. And in this case, you do something like this. You have import metadata from next. And then what you do is you export, you return the title, open graph. No, that's not the one. Is that the one? Page tsx, import metadata, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, generate metadata, and then you get the params, and then you do. But I don't think that's the one I wanted. Yeah, this is the one I wanted. The title attributes will be, this is the one. So inside my page, I can do metadata and title Next.js, and this should work. So if I do it right here in the threads page.tsx, if I do something like this, then this should say threads list. And now if I go to my page, you can see right here, it now says threads list on the thread list page. If I go to home, it says create next app, but in here it says threads list. If I go to particular thread, it should then change the title there as well. So in this particular case, I could go there and try to do that as well. But when I have to do it sort of dynamically, then it becomes a problem. So for example, if I get the metadata, and if I wanted to change it from my component, that's where it becomes a bit of a problem. So let's see. Template, blah, blah, blah. And if I do it dynamic, yes. So dynamic metadata depends on dynamic information such as the current route parameters, external data or metadata in the parent segments, and can be set by exporting a generate metadata function that returns a metadata object, which means that I can just export this guy and this should work. So that means that in the particular threads page in here, I can actually go and then say this. So generate metadata, which would take the params, okay? And then we have resolving metadata. Let's import from next, promise metadata, import from next. So what I need to do is the same thing as here. So prompts or params would get the params ID. Then I would have to get the thread just like this. And then I have to get the title of the thread or by maybe. So we could do something like, hey, I'm going to take the params ID. Inside here, I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to get the thread using the ID that we have right here. And then I'm going to say, hey, the title is actually going to be something like this. So maybe let's do something like this. Comment by, and we can do thread.by. Okay, let's do this. Now, if I go here, you can see it says comment by Muhammad Ahsan Ayaz. Look at the top, comment by Muhammad Ahsan Ayaz, right? And here it says this is the first comment, Muhammad Ahsan Ayaz. If I go back to threads, if I go to Mohsin Ayaz, then this says comment by Mohsin Ayaz. So the title actually changes. If you look at the head right here and you look at the title, you can see here comment by Mohsin Ayaz. And if I go to the other one, you can see the title here that should change to, did I do it too quickly? Maybe I did. So here it says comment by Mohsin Ayaz. So here, if I go to the head, comment by Muhammad Ahsan Ayaz. Okay. So it takes the right value. So this is also a really good thing to know if you want to change titles. So I hope this helps as well. Now that we have all this magic that we have just talked about, let's actually get into the application itself and how do we make this work for our threads list. So I'm going to do this in two parts. Now that you have understood the basics of Next.js, we want to be able to render, or we want to be able to, let's say, have a blooper. Now that we have this, what I want to do is to be able to at least render some of the data that I already have. So we're going to get a JSON and then we are going to work with that, and I'm going to help you with that as well. But before that, let me quickly change the camera's battery. So give me 1 second. Be right back. All right, I'm back. So the camera works. Cool, cool, cool. All right, one thing that I want to do is, give me 1 second. I need to also fix something. All right, fixed. Cool. So what I want to do is to be able to actually copy paste a bunch of code so I don't have to do it again. And I'm going to create the gist files for you as well. So you can also do a copy pasta as well. So along the way, we'll do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to app, components. We have comment and the comment HTML. So I'm going to actually copy this guy right here. And the only things that would usually change would be um, the click handlers, and then also a bit of animations as well. So let's actually do this. So I'm going to go to my threads. Where are you? Next thread next. Yeah, there you are. So I'm going to create a component and I'm going to use it in the threads page. In my application, we don't have actually much going on. So no login, no logout. So instead of this thing that we have right here, we're going to actually create a home page and then we are going to take it from there. So how do we, or let's think about it. So I have a home page which would show the stuff. So let's actually use the home page, the default page. This is the page TSX. We're going to use this one. but we also want to have some components. So inside the app, I'm going to have a folder, and I'm going to say components. And then I'm going to create a component file. So let's call this comment.tsx. And inside that, I'm going to have a React functional component. So in this case, we have a comment component in which we have this HTML that we have just copied. A lot of things don't make sense here. So the class doesn't work in React. So we need to change this to class name. So class name equals, and there we go. Now what I want to do is I want to make this component or have some sort of comment so it can render it. So this means that I have to pass a comment, and I also have to have a comment type as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my my Angular project, and in here I'm going to actually copy an interface. It's going to be comment interface. So let's copy this guy. And we also have a user in there as well. We'll copy that as well. So here I'm going to say app interfaces. In here, let's say comment or comment.interface.ts. I'm going to paste this, but you can take your time and also copy this as well if you want. Now, what I want to do is I want to also go to user interface and then copy this guy. And then I can go right here and say user.interface.ts. This goes right here. And now this file is happy as well. And then I can actually type it right here. So I can say, hey, type props equals, and in here, I'm going to receive a comment. So comment is going to be of type comment. So we import comment from the interfaces comment.interface. So you import it, and in here you can extract out comment by providing this as props. And then this comment actually then can work with other stuff as well. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. Now this says blah, 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 comma expected. Why? Oh, because we have two. So let's remove these two with a single one. And then also let's remove these folks with a single one as well. Cool. So comment.user.name, blah, blah, blah. Now we also have to change a bunch of other things like handlers, blah, blah, blah. So look at what I'm doing right now. I'm going to actually comment out these things. We're going to keep the DL, but we are going to remove this click handler. So we are going to create a function that says toggle replying. So let's create that. Const toggle replying equals, and then this is the function. Instead of click in React, what do we have? On click, and which takes a toggle replying reference like this. Then similarly, we are going to do the same thing here, but this one is going to be toggle expanded. So this, we're going to create another function. We are going to call toggle expanded. And then this one should be happy. Now we can't really have these classes in React in this particular case, but I can actually change this to have it like this. So in here, I can say class name is going to be this, which means it's always going to have duration 200, but this class is going to be optional. So here I can say, hey, if I have is expanded true, then what we want to do is have class rotate 180, otherwise nothing. So this seems a bit overwhelming. Let me break it down and explain to you what we are doing right here. So we are saying that, hey, if there is a variable that has is expanded true, I want to rotate this whole SVG, and that is pretty much it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this, this thing right here. I'm not sure what I need to do here. Oh yeah, this is what I needed to do. Now it makes much more sense. And now I'm going to also sort of revert this, remove these comments that I mistakenly created, just replace them with an empty string. And then I can go ahead and comment this guy out. Cool. Now what I need to do is I need to have two things. One, if I'm replying, then I need to show something, but I'm going to talk about it later. but I need this variable in order to sort of show expand or collapse. But let me show you in just a bit. So I'm gonna say, hey, const is expanded, set is expanded, and now we are going into the React world, use state, and then we're gonna use false by default. Now is expanded is happy. Our whole code is not red. Everything looks nice. And now we can go to actually implementing this. So what I want you to do now is we have toggle replying. This should say set toggle replying, and we should also have is replying as well. So is replying, set is replying. And then here we can say set is replying to not is replying, which means that we are just negating it. And same goes for this. So set is expanded to not is expanded. Okay, so now we have this. I'm gonna actually use this component in my home page to just render a bunch of threads, a bunch of comments. So each comment has to have what? A text, a user, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so this is going to be the user that we are going to provide it, and the rest looks nice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my homepage.tsx, and in here I'm going to render the comment. So here comment, which is supposed to be components comment. And what should this return, or what should this really have? This should have a comment passed as an input, and this should contain a comment object. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create an object inside which I would have a text. Let's say sample comment. Then I'm going to say this also has an ID 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I also want this to have user, which should have also an ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and should have a name, sample user. Okay. Now, what does it say? Comment has no corresponding closing tag. Oh yeah, it doesn't. There we go. And what does this say? Parent is missing in the type. So in this case, parent has to be null. So we are just using this for the example so we can render something. Now, if I go to my home page, it should work, but it will not. Now comes a really, really important lesson in Next.js. What is that lesson? Everything in Next.js, when we are talking about getting some data and then rendering, is a server-side component. In a server-side component, you cannot have anything that has click handlers or has a state. So you cannot have a client-side rendering component rendered on the page on the server side. So what you need to explicitly say is this comment is a client-side component. Otherwise, it won't work. So what would happen here is you need to say this, use client, and then it works. There you go. Now, if I go to home, you can see here we have the nice little UI right here. Sample user, sample comment, reply, likes, and we have this guy right here as well. Cool, cool, cool. We are also going to make sure that this looks nice on the dark mode as well. So I'm going to go in the article, and inside here, we do have the border gray, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to the text itself, here, it should have a dark text white. So now you can see sample user. And then also there should be dark text gray. And this should be something like 300. There you go. So now this looks much nicer, right? And then also I think here, this text also should be something like text, dark, text, indigo, but we are going to go for a lighter version, maybe 400 or even 300, so to say. So here, I think this is much nicer. Umar Siddiqui is asking, I thought Nest.js is better than Next.js. What's your thoughts on it? Umar, I think it really depends on your use case, to be honest. There's no best thingy or better. When you talk about better, we have to think about performance, usability, use case. I like Nest more, Nest, N-E-S-T, Nest more because of the way it works. And if I want a backend having a super nice control over it, I would use it. But I also like Next.js as well because of the ease it provides with the tooling, server-side rendering, static generation, ISR, a lot of things. I like it, to be honest. All right, now that we have this, we can actually have the same thing render multiple components. So in here, I could actually go ahead and create an array that renders this. So I can say const comments equals, and in here 1, 2. So sample comment 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, sample user, blah, 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 blah. And in here, then I can say comments, but this then can be rendered in a list. So I can say comments dot map comment basically returns this guy with a key of comment.id. Okay, so now here, or this should be comment._id. So now you can see multiple comments right here. Okay, now we need to sort of rotate this, but we also have some warnings. So let's fix those. I think these are about SVG and not. Yes. So stroke line cap doesn't exist. So we need to change this to stroke line cap, comment TSX. And here, this should be stroke line cap. And then I think this is also going to be stroke line join. And then do we have more? I don't think so. Stroke width. Let's see if we have any more warnings. We do have one, I think. Encounter two children with the same key, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, absolutely, because both of the comments have the same ID. So in page TSX app, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and refresh. One more thing. So this says extra attribute from the server data, new gear check loaded, ext installed. Mm. I have no clue, so I'm gonna skip it for now. Let's also have a look at the console. Yep, no errors seem to be there. Yep, I have no clue. So now that we have this, let's actually talk about rotating this guy. So if I go to my comment TSX, and here you saw that we had the expanded. So when we click replying, it toggles replying. When we click this guy, it should say toggle expanded. And then it should change this, right? Now it doesn't rotate for you, as you can see. For the rotation, if I say this to toggle replying, status replying is expanded. But then in there we have, oh, this should be rotate 180. There we go. Now you see the animation. So what did we really change here? If we have is expanded, previously it was class.rotate, which was Angular. This is supposed to be is expanded, rotate 180, easy peasy. So now I can toggle this and you can see that this works. If I refresh, by default, it's not expanded. If I click this, it becomes expanded and it should show more content. Now that we have this, let's also have this component where you can have nested components. So let's say if our data changes, and then inside here, we have something like comments. And in here, we have then further comments down below as well, right? So if that is the case, then what should we do? Because in this case, we say if we have, no, we wouldn't have nested comments right here, but let me think now. So we have comment, which is a nested comment. And we have nested comments here. How did we get the nested comments? Oh yeah, we get it by the other things. No, we're not gonna go there. So let's say that we have a comment that we can then render. Okay, let's keep it like this. And now we also are going to implement a feature where we should be able to create a comment. So I'm gonna actually remove this, or let's keep this for now. And we have something that can expand or collapse. We are also going to go ahead in our page TSX to reduce this to 2XL. So it looks something like this. And now what we want to do is to be able to create a form that we can use to submit our text. So what we want to do in this case is we're going to go to the components and comment form. And in here, I'm going to actually copy this guy, go to my components, create comment form.tsx, do this. So we have import React from React, comment form, export default, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to replace this and then fix the attributes. So in here, we have submit form submit. So we should have something like const form submit equals event, and then it should be event.prevent default, but this would be submit event. And then I'm going to change this guy to on submit, and then we can say form submit. Okay. Now we have a text area which has a placeholder that says placeholder. I should be receiving some props. So this should be type props equals, we should receive a placeholder that will be of type string. We should also have a button text property that will be of type string. So here we can say placeholder button text, and in here we can say props. So now I can use this placeholder as this. So removing the brackets, adding curly brackets, making it like this. Then we should also have the button text having single brackets. This should be class name. We'll see where this goes, but wait. Then we also have rows. Anything changing there? No. So type string is not assignable to number. Oh, because this should be 3. Then this should be class name. And this guy is not happy. So it says HTML detail HTML. What? Oh, is it because we have the form event, HTML form? Okay. So this is not submit event, but rather form event. It comes from React. Now I understand. Class name. And then here we should just say console.log event.target. And then we need to take out the form. So const form element equals event.target as HTML form element. And then here we can say just form L dot elements. So we're just going to console log those. And now we have a form that we can use right now. Again, this has to be a use client. So we're going to make this a use client. And now we can go ahead inside our home page. And in here, just above the comments list, I can create a, I can create a section that has comment form. So let's do comment form. And what does this take? 2 things. 1, placeholder. Let's say the placeholder says write something. And then we also have something called button text. So button text is submit. So now if I do this, go to my app, there you go, write something. And then we have the submit button. So what I'm going to do is in the comment form as well, we do have the dark text not being nice. So this one, you can't see anything. So we need to fix that. So in this case, we have the text area, which has the border slate rounded, blah, blah, blah. But here we probably have some text here. Maybe we don't have it. So text slate 900, but dark text slate, no, text white. No. But then also this text area should have a background dark as well. So dark BG slate 900. There we go. Looks nicer. And then this guy should also have the text indigo 600, but dark text indigo. And this should be 300, I think. That's what we picked, right? So 300, 300, 300. And there we go. Yeah, these buttons look nice now. So now that you see this, I can actually do this and hit submit, and that should do something. And here on the console log, I can see the text area, I can see the button, I can see the common text, value, ASD. That's what I actually want. Nothing more, nothing less, to be honest. And now that we can render those two things, let's talk about how do we create the data in the database. So we already have our, what we need to do in this particular case is to be able to first have users who can comment, and then also to be able to create a comment by that user. Okay, so those are the two things that you would want to do. So having a user and then making sure that a user can submit a particular comment in this particular case. So now that we have this, let's also try to do one thing. And what we are going to do is, in this case, we can see some differences between my app, or I actually killed my server. But in this particular case, we would have some styling changes as well. But what I want from here is to be able to have a mongoose connect to a database, then having an API endpoint that can actually receive some information, and then actually sort of hooking everything together. But I think I'm going to do that in the next stream. Hi, is it normal that we got a black screen? Not really, because I'm using the dark mode. But if you use the light mode, then I think you won't be really having that. So dark mode, system wide. So dark, light, and let there be light. As you can see, this is the light mode. So this is what you would usually get. And I just realized I don't have a background for this guy. So this means I should probably have it on the light mode, but then not on the dark mode. So let's actually fix that. Good catch right there. So let's go ahead to the page. And before we wrap up, I'm just going to fix these little things, the UI things, so we are good for the next time. So welcome to Threads app, blah, blah, blah. In the layout TSX, we have this right here, BG Indigo 600. This would have the text set to white. So if I see this right here, this looks nice. If I change this to dark, it still looks nice. So let's keep it that way. Then also in the dark mode, we don't have a background, but in the light mode, we should have a background for our for these cards. So let's change that. So I'm going to go to the comment component, and in here we should have. I literally see nothing on Twitch, not even your screen, your app, or your cam. Oh, that's what you meant. No, then I have no clue, bro. Twitch is weird. Shortly put, it's a, yeah, it sometimes works. It sometimes doesn't work at all. And I think that's probably because I'm using Restream. So I'm not sure if Restream has some issues with that. But it's super weird, to be honest. Okay, so let's quickly put the background here. So in this case, we would have a BG white when it's light mode. So if you see it right here, this is how it looks on the light mode. And if it's dark, then BG transparent should be fine. So in this case, if I now try to go to dark mode, dark, cool. It looks nice on dark mode. It looks nice on the light mode as well. There you go. Do you stream on other platform? Yes, Skane. I'm right now streaming on YouTube as well as on Facebook. So if you search CodewithAhsan, you're gonna find both of them. But I would say probably YouTube is better. So now that we have the UI completed, we're gonna start looking into the backend API routes and the database, and then sort of hooking them together. But I don't think it's gonna be possible today. So I'm gonna record another video in order to do that. So thank you everyone for listening. Whoever joined, let me know in the comments if this was helpful. If there's something else that you want me to work on. Do you want authentication in this particular tutorial or not? Or if you're fine with just us working with the front end, the back end, routes, API, API endpoints, and then MongoDB. If that's all you want, I think that's all what we are going to get. So thank you everyone for joining in. I'm gonna hop off now, and yes, we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye. Allah Hafiz.